All right, groups part 2. Let's first take a look at when the group is created. It's created not live, which doesn't make sense. So live equals true, and so we'll assume it's true, and self dot live equals live. Okay, so in live you have a boolean. So we'll start it off as true unless you tell me otherwise. But in those groups, the query that's happening here is just getting all live groups, though you're sorting them alphabetically, and that's cool. But it's not based by school. So let's filter by a second thing, and we'll also make the group's school ID have to match the current user's school ID. And so that way, we'll make sure that only these groups are the ones that are in the same school as the user. Okay, I think we need to create a new group button here. Just for consistency's sake, I'm going to rename this to group list, since they're all singular here. And that means in the views, when I build this template, I need to change that as well. So maybe right after the heading, I'm going to make a link, and it's going to be a URL for whatever a new group is. So just look up that URL, and so that will be that. And inside, I'll just have an icon with the class for Font Awesome, and we'll do a Font Awesome Plus, and that'll be that. And now let's see what that looks like. That looks ugly. Okay, well, that's some CSS. Maybe we can put groups there. Maybe we'll put it down here instead, make it make more sense. But if I click it, it brings me here. Okay. Now, I don't know why you'd want these CK editors on all of them, but if you did, this is how you'd format them. You first, inside your base.html, need to have a block inserted into the head. So that way our templates can sneak some extra code into the every page's head object, where like JavaScript and other key files are imported and linked to the DOM. And so in order for them to load inside the form itself, we insert stuff into that block head using the CK editor stuff. And you can find examples out there, and which is how I figured out how to do this stuff. And so we load that stuff into the head of the base theme, and that way it'll have the JavaScript ready, and it knows to convert these things and to target them because we created them as CK editor fields in the forms. And so these things, when they get imported here and rendered on the form, it comes with a lot of the triggers necessary to get picked up by the CK editor thing. So if you wanted to return them back to normal boxes, we can just change that to string fields and something built into these form engine that we have. But that's up to you. Now there's a trick you can do to get the first bits of a string here. And if you wanted to, you could get the first bit of code inside here when we have this body. The problem is that might end up producing some broken HTML code, and so that's not necessarily safe to only have half a bit of HTML code. And the reason why it's HTML, because that's what CK editor is going to write down. It's rich text, so it's going to have additional formatting, so you can't as easily crop it. I wonder, I bet CK editor will have something built in for us to or something, some sort of way to get a snippet code that's safe from a rich text field. because at some point you're going to want to have a sample of the message there. But if you hit more, you'll see the whole body of that group. But you might rather not display all of the contents inside a group's let me see here. Inside a group's body content. It could be a lot in there. Oh, cool. Looks like you already have a group page coming together. If you don't mind, let's call this, in order just to keep this, I have like group details. That way an individual group is like that, and so we'll need to straighten that out. So, do we have a group details? Edit announcement, group edit. Okay, we want a group details page here. Okay, we need to fix some of this. Let's have all of them, all of these. So feed is separate from all of this group activity. So it should be the first one, because then we have the groups index, and we can do one more like this, and we can groups.index.html in case someone old school like that. And then groups, let's have all of these groups, groups, and then the number of groups, and then new announcement. So everything sort of makes sense here. Groups, new, groups, edit, and if we're going to edit a group, we'll need to know what the group number was. So that'll be an int group ID and /edit, and that means we'll also need the group ID as a parameter, and that'll come in through the get request. Okay. Alright, and we'll name this method the same as the template that we build here. And so we're going to return that render template, and we'll load that from social and the group details.html. Alright, and so we'll load that, and we'll need to pass the group that's it's going to be expecting a group that we'll need to create, and so we're going to need to look up this group. So the group will be group.query.filter by ID equals group ID, and then group ID, and we'll get first or 404. So if we didn't find it, we'll return that. But before we render this template, we'll need to check to see that this person has a relationship with the group. Inside the group model, this might be something that we build into the model. We'll do it after all of these built-in methods. So underneath this, we can build our own. For example, I wrote the database query a little bit differently this time just to try it. I can see if we have a member, and we'll take a user, and we'll use that user's ID to see if there's any membership where it has this user's ID and this group's own ID, and we'll get the first one. And then we'll see if there is something there. If it's blank, this will be false. And so that's the same. A blank list is the same thing as saying false if reduced down to a Boolean, like I'm doing now. In fact, I can make sure that it gets reduced down to a Boolean by like that, doing this. So I'll reduce this down to a Boolean property. Is this true? And also, this can't be. So you can't be an applicant and be considered a member. So applicant can't be inside the membership role that we just looked up. But it won't try to access that, which will throw an error because it won't exist. It won't try to access that if at first we make sure that we make sure that it's not blank. So over in our views file, we could check now to see if this group is private for some reason, that if they're not a member, then we would kick them out. But at the very least, let's make sure that they go to the same school. So if you go to a group page, and if the group's ID is not the same thing as your, if the group's school ID is not the same thing as your school ID, then we'll give a warning flash message that that group goes to a different school, and then we'll redirect you back to the group index. Otherwise, we will pass you right along to the template, and we'll pass the group over to that template. And so let's look at the group details. And so block heading, I don't think we use these blocks, do we? Do you have such blocks here? No, I don't see any block heading. So I assume we can get rid of that. Block title is probably, you want to use the group name for the title. And just to double check, a group has a name, right? Yes. Okay. Always double check. We already went over that. So, what is this for? This is for some sort of container. This is the group name. This is other links. I'm not sure why these are here. It's more group name details. Let's see what this looks like. But in order to see a particular group, inside the, not this one, inside the group list, we need the URL for, and that is group details. And group details needs a additional, it's going to expect a group ID, and that is equal to, since we're looping through the groups inside the collection here, this group's .id. And cool. And so that will look up the link for that. And so now if I check this out, this, you can see the link down here, will look up that group's index. And so now I see the name of the group, and I see the details here. Cool. And so we can make a join group button for this, and we'll also make sure that the group is in the same school. But now that I'm repeating code, it means that I should make my own decorator here. So at this point, I should make a to-do list to create a new decorator for that. So we'll just have to make a note there. So if you try to join, it checks to see if you already have a membership between this user and this group. If so, it flashes a danger message and redirects you back to the group. If not, it creates a membership as an applicant, submits it to the database, flashes a success, and gets you back to the index. If not, it sends you to the index and saying, you shouldn't get this. It should never make it down here. Now we make a link for it, similarly as we did with the group details. And I pressed it, and it now shows up. And you can see that my application is here. And so now, inside group details, we can loop through, list all the members, and loop through, display all of the applicants. And if you are a leader, if your group, if your membership.role is, when between this group and this user is a leader of some sort, then we'll give you the option to approve those applications. And in fact, if we didn't want the membership to just read the role, we could have a Boolean equal to administrator, and they'll have the privileges to approve or deny the application.